Hi, this is Jenn Lang, and thanks for your interest in the Puget Sound Seabird Survey. This video is meant to describe to you how to collect your bearing measurements for the birds that you observe during a Puget Sound Seabird Survey. So for our program, we are actually going to be doing bearing a little bit different from traditional bearing records. And what we're going to be doing is not turning the dial at all. So what we're going to do is keep this north arrow pointing in line with the arrow of the compass. So maintaining this north arrow, this north at 0, and not shifting the dial at all. What we're going to be doing is reading off where this red arrow is pointing toward when we're pointing the compass at the bird or groups of birds that we see during our survey. So without moving the dial at all, we're going to be reading off where the red arrow is pointing to the nearest tick, or that nearest line on the compass. So we could do this in two ways. We could use our scope in using our Velcro strap that you also have in your kit. So what you can do is take this Velcro strip and wrap it around your scope's front, like so. Each compass has a small Velcro square on its back that allows you to line it up flush with your scope and pointing along the line of sight with your scope. So what we're going to do is make sure that this arrow is pointing straight in the same line of sight as your scope, and that way when you're using your scope to spot and identify and confirm birds, what you can do is simply point your scope toward that bird or group of birds and read off the direction the arrow is pointing straight off of that scope without having to fandangle with the compass at all. Again, we're not going to be turning the dial, and we're simply going to read off the number that red arrow is pointing toward as the bearing record for that bird or group of birds on your data sheet. So if I have a bird that's pointing this way, I would simply read it off as 130 degrees as my bearing for the bird going this direction. Another way we could do this, if you do not have a scope, which is not required for these surveys, is do a handheld version. So what you're going to be doing is using your body as the point of reference to actually record or look at where that bird is pointing toward. So what you're going to do is hold the compass in line and square with your body, and you're going to rotate your body to indicate where that bird is located. So without touching the dial again, we would record bearing if having this arrow, the line of sight of the compass, pointing directly at that bird or group of birds, and reading off where that red arrow is pointing toward that bird without moving the dial at all again. So this would be 278 if there were birds located in this direction. So what we want to make sure is that you are pointing the compass directly at that individual that you're trying to record the bearing for. So simply, that is how you collect your bearing measurements for your birds. Again, if your horizon is obscured by a boat, by piers, or any structures, we would mark that down as horizon obscured and would not record any distance or bearing measurements. We also would not record any distance and bearing measurements for any birds that are flying or on structures like piles or on a floating log. We would only record bearing and distance for birds that are within 300 meters and floating on the water. If there's a bird that flies off or dives before we could get an accurate measurement for distance and bearing, we ask to omit those records because we want to make sure you feel as confident as you can when you're recording your distance and bearing measurements. If you have any questions about why we're collecting distance measurements, please refer to our protocol on our website, www.seabirdsurvey.org. And thanks for watching, and have a great season.